Okay, it's almost ready.
Yeah. Should be good.
Okay. Gabbie, I will be asking you your first question, and when you start answering, Rochelle will be starting with 5 minutes. Okay. If you're ready, I'll ask you the first one. So the first question is, can you please elaborate on the project you want to integrate into the internship program?
Yes, for sure. So I discussed briefly the community engagement project I wanted to introduce. And as I mentioned, as CC, Ant and I were very fortunate to work with the Historic Filipino Town Coalition, KMV Pro People Youth, and SIPA. And I think it would be really amazing to see our interns get involved with this kind of work, because we're building on this amazing momentum we've had this year in relation to advocacy. So that would take on the form of them either going to an event like Pretend Mag-Usap Mondays with SIPA, or volunteering and supporting the different drives and grassroots initiatives that these organizations are having. They have so many right now, like COVID relief initiatives, or just voting drives, or just giving back to the community, like whether that be funds, clothing, or just generally educating our fellow Filipinx communities. So of course, I don't want to propose anything that would be a burden to other folks. So let's say if they go to 2 hours of an event, or support 2 hours, or volunteer for 2 hours, I would subtract that from an e-board meeting requirement. So the time that they would have spent at an e-board, they can just spend giving back directly to their community. And I think that can really provide them with a lot of meaningful insight, because Filipino history has such a vibrant culture of community organizing and building cross coalitions. And I think it's really important that we integrate that, because we have been, and I really think it's the next natural step for Leadership Board. In terms of integrating that into the culture project, as you may know, we have 2 existing culture project prompts, like your family history, and then kind of sharing a piece of your culture. So I want to introduce a third culture project prompt, where interns have the opportunity to write about their experience volunteering with any of these organizations, and how that impacted their understanding of their identity, their community. And I think they're really interrelated, and I think it would be really amazing to see our interns get involved with this kind of work.
Thank you, Gabbie. Your next question is, how do you see Troy Phi as a political versus social student org, and is there room for both?
That's a really good question, and that's actually something we've been discussing in our board meetings lately. And I can't give you the perfect answer for that. I think I want to say that there is room for both, because as we've seen, we have been able to incorporate these kind of politically, not charged, but politically related and advocacy related events, missions, and messages into our meetings. And I think it's really important that we do so. But that doesn't necessarily take away from the social aspect of the club. As I mentioned, I really think community and culture, just even from my previous position, they're so interrelated, and they shape each other and they form each other. And with that being said, I think it is very much possible for us to be not necessarily a political org, but a politically aware and engaged in advocacy kind of org, in addition to being a social and cultural organization.
Thank you. Your next question is, how would you deal with conflicts between 2 members in the program, and how would you deal with an inter-board conflict as well?
Mm-hmm. So I think I would definitely want to approach both inter-board conflict and just general member conflict in the same manner. And I think, that comes from 2 pillars, the first being honest and respectful communication, and the second being confidentiality. In terms of communication, we're all adults here, and no one wants conflict. So in the case that it does arise, I think it's important for me to take a step back and see that I know the situation well enough, and to find that neutral and impartial perspective on the matter at hand. And then I think I should talk to each person individually and try to see where they're at in the moment, and see maybe this is like a mere miscommunication or misunderstanding. And if both parties involved are willing and ready, I think the next step is for them to converse with each other and have a mediator present. In that case, that would be myself. And I would really want to emphasize respectful communication, I, not you statements, as well as community guidelines, to ensure that we're being proactive about these kind of conversations and not just adding salt to the wound. In terms of confidentiality, I believe that all the aforementioned steps should take place in private. Some of this information can be emotional, or so it's definitely not my place or anyone else's place to be discussing any kind of conflict beyond the involved parties. I mean, we're all family here at Troy Phi, as cliche as it sounds, but it's the truth. And in families, there are going to be fights and disagreements, but at the end of the day, we're all adult enough to sit down and try to work through it. And I guess that's what really matters at the core of everything.
Okay, thank you. Your next question is, how do you how do you plan to help the leadership board to transition into an in-person semester?
Okay, yes. I saw we have 1 minute, so I'm going to try to breeze through this. And I'm sorry if this is not comprehensive, but I think what was really interesting observing leadership board this year, from my intern semester in person as well as it being online this year, was that it was almost a seamless transition, because I think it's not really based in the geographic location or being online or in person. It really depends on the people and the people who show up, like regardless if that's on Zoom or at Taper. And I think in just supporting the leadership board's transition into a hopefully in-person semester, I would really draw on resources from our past or from predecessors like Maya and possibly Diana, and looking at the previous documents, what worked, and how we can continue to foster that community. Because if we if we did it online, we can do it in person, and that's for sure.
Thank you, Gabbie. Everyone give her a round of applause.